She Sanji Kinninchla, do my deshini bashishi, na toden et tachini dashiche, do kia ani dashanella, Amanda Whitesinger Yinisha, She Baka Ogeda Det Nasha, Kada E Hosto Deshan. Hi everybody, my name is Amanda. I am the Indigenous Wellness Manager here at Native Health in Phoenix, Arizona. And today I will be showing you all how to make a squash corn pudding that we got from the Pueblo Food Experience Cookbook. But before we get started, I want to talk to you a little bit about my program and what we do here. So our Indigenous Wellness Program is comprised of two different programs. So we have our garden program led by our awesome garden coordinator, Melissa Cruz Peoples. And we have two gardens, a traditional garden and a community garden. And at our community garden, located on Central and Indian School, we have spaces available for family or adults that are interested, that want to know more about gardening. Melissa really is hands-on. We provide the tools, the seeds, the resources for you to be able to grow and really be successful at it. So we do that. And you can email Melissa, and we'll link her email below. Our diabetes program is also part of the Indigenous Wellness Program. And in that, we do our monthly cooking demos virtually. We do movement videos that have been virtually. And then we have a Wellness Warrior program, which is for 7 to 12-year-old Native youth that promote movement. And then we also do fun cooking videos every week on social media. And then we also do weekly garden videos on our Native Health social media pages on Facebook and Instagram. So make sure to follow Native Health Phoenix on Facebook and Instagram for the month of November for Native American Heritage Month. We are going to be posting Movement with Medicine videos each week with our community health worker, Amber. We're also going to be partnering with our Tribal Practices program and doing a Walk in Your Mox series virtually. We will also be doing a 4-part powwow fit workshop with the Yellowbird Indian dancers. And we will be doing a virtual bike rodeo this year. In years past, it's always been in person and a huge event. But this year, due to COVID, we are going to be doing that event virtually. So make sure and look at Native Health Facebook for all of those events and details. So like I said earlier, our recipe today is a corn squash pudding, and it's found from the Pueblo Food Experience Cookbook. Now, if you haven't seen this or heard of it, I highly recommend it. What they did was they found all of these ingredients using traditional indigenous foods grown by the Pueblo people. So this recipe is super easy and super simple. There's only 3 ingredients. Now, pudding we thought would be nice since it's starting to get fall, and even though not in Phoenix yet, hopefully in other areas it's a little bit cooler, so having a nice warm pudding can warm you up. And so what we're going to do is the recipe, and we'll put the recipe out for you. It calls for 2 cups of white corn. Now here in Phoenix, at my local grocery store, I wasn't able to find white corn, so what I got was a can of fresh sweetened corn. Now this may change the flavor a little bit because this corn is sweetened. So if you want to stick true to the recipe, it's going to be white corn. And then for what I did today was I halved the recipe because it'll only be me eating it. And then 1 zucchini. Now these are in season, so they're fairly cheap. And then it called for 2 tablespoons of sunflower seeds or pine nuts. So now if you're living on the reservation, on the Navajo reservation, you can go pinyon picking and find those pine nuts. But here in Phoenix, they actually sell them for about $20 a pound. That's pretty steep for me, so I actually got sunflower seeds for this. So before we start, we want to make sure that we are washing our hands with warm water and soap for at least 20 seconds. And now what we're going to do, the first step would be to chop off the white corn on the cob. But since I used canned, what I did was I drained it and then I rinsed it with water. And now I'm going to finely dice my zucchini. Now we're all familiar with corn, beans, and squash. They're more prominently known as 3 sisters. And really their origin story varies by tribe. I think I read that the Iroquois have a story that there was 3 sisters. One was tall and could see above the crops. The little sister was small and she could be hidden. So that's the squash. And then the third sister was more in the middle, and that's the beans. And really what these 3 crops do together is they help each other. So they provide the nutrients, the soil nutrients that they need to thrive. And so that's kind of how they go together. And there's a lot of recipes that keep them together just because they grow so well together. And they have a lot of good nutrients that complement each other. Now I'm going to dice them as finely as possible because once we combine all of our ingredients, we're going to mix. And you can mash. We're going to mash. Now you can mash by hand, but what I'm going to use is I'm going to use a blender. And so I'm going to dice them finely, but I don't need to dice them so finely because I'm going to use the blender. And it'll be a little cheat sheet right there. Your own corns, beans, and squash at our community garden. We have the space for you to grow, and all you need to do is contact Melissa. And the rows are fairly long. However, you don't need to commit to a whole row. You can commit to a space, and then if you're not able to commit but you're interested and you want to learn, you can come out on the work days. And then just kind of help and get familiar. And then what Melissa does is whatever produce is available, she gives to people who come out and volunteer. So what we're currently growing in the garden, we just actually started growing squash and zucchini. So that's what's coming up. So right now, for the Phoenix area, it's a good time to start growing those. We also, and when I say we, I mean our garden coordinator, Melissa, also started growing 60-day autumn corn. And then among other things like radish, carrots. It's a little bit too hot in Phoenix right now for the greens. So once the temperatures finally cool, I'm hoping soon, we'll get to do a lot of the leafy greens. So zucchini is a part of the squash family, and it has a lot of good nutrients and vitamins. And it also has a nutrient we like to call fiber. Now fiber is what you want because it helps us keeps us fuller for longer periods of time. And once we have our zucchini finely chopped, I'm going to find a bowl and put that in. And then I'm going to finely dice our sunflower seeds. Chop our sunflower seeds. Now, like I mentioned earlier, once we're done cutting up all of our ingredients, we are going to mash them all together. However, what I'm going to do is I am going to blend it all together. So my dices don't have to be so precise. Alright, so once you have your sunflower or pine nuts diced to your liking, what we're going to do, like I said, you can mix them all together and mash them yourself, but I'm going to use a blender. Now our blender at work is pretty small, so I'm going to do it in smaller batches so I don't overload it. So I'm just going to do 2 handfuls of my corn and then 2 handfuls of my diced zucchini, and then about half of my sunflower seeds. Yeah, we're just going to add more. And then we are going to blend this until our texture is milky. Okay, so we actually used a food processor, and that was better able than a blender. So I would recommend using a food processor. And then we just had it for about 2 minutes. And then we got that nice milky texture, and that's what you want. And while we were doing that, we were heating up our saucepan, and we're just having it at a medium. And once that is nice and warm, we're gonna add our mixture into the saucepan and then just heat it up. And then once that's heated, it's good to go. And so what I was realizing as I was using the blender, it's that it wasn't able to chop everything and really get it to the consistency that we needed. And so by using the food processor, it was a lot easier. And so like I said, I didn't have big chunks. The food processor was able to dice and mince everything together. And then all we're going to do is heat it in our pan. And then once this is heated, we are ready to enjoy our corn squash pudding. So we are going to boil and let it simmer until it's a nice thick consistency like pudding. And so what I'm realizing as we are cooking it is that when we were put it in the food processor, we could have probably left it in the food processor for longer to get a nice, more milky consistency, so it's a little bit runny. Because if you can, as you can see, and you can't see, but the consistency is pretty thick already. So what that tells me is in our food processor, it needed to stay a little bit longer. So like I said, we did about 2 to 3 minutes. So I would do 5 to 8 minutes in the food processor to really get that nice runny consistency. And then when you're adding it to the heat, you're going to let it boil and simmer to get a very thick consistency. Now you may be tempted to add water. Just be patient. We're going to keep stirring as we go, so we don't want the bottom to burn. But for our next cooking demo, or for our next cooking videos in honor of Native American Heritage Month, each week my team is going to put out an Indigenous recipe with Indigenous ingredients, so be on the lookout for that. And if you have any ideas, comments, or suggestions, please comment on our videos, email me and my team. We're excited to do something new for Native American Heritage Month. And if you try these recipes at home, please send us the pictures. Let us know how they taste. So now, unfortunately, you can't smell it. So really what it smells like corn. So for me, it smells like that roasted cornmeal. And for me, that smells like home. And it's important, especially for our little ones, to eat Indigenous ingredients, Indigenous recipes, because food is medicine, and eating the foods that our ancestors ate just reconnects us. And in time like this during COVID, being away from my family, being away from my homeland, one thing that I can do to reconnect, to make me feel like I'm home, is by making Indigenous ingredients, food that my ancestors ate. And not only is it good for our mind, it's also really good for our body, for our health. You know, as Indigenous people, we weren't always plagued with the chronic health diseases, and it's because of the foods that our ancestors ate. So by reconnecting with the foods that they ate, learning about it, teaching your young ones. It'll just make everyone overall happy and healthy. And so I think our squash corn pudding is complete. So if you want to zoom in, it actually looks like guacamole. That's what I think. It looks like guacamole. It smells like that roasted cornmeal, which I think, for me, it makes me think of home. And I've been stirring consistently for about the past 5 to 6 minutes on medium heat. I didn't walk away from it, and so all you need to do is take it off the stove, and you can serve immediately. And so what we're going to do, you can see how it has a very thick consistency. As before, it was a little bit runnier. Now, if you're going to try this at home, I would leave it in the food processor longer than I did. So I did it about 2 to 3 minutes. So I would at least double that. But as you can see, even though it wasn't as runny, we were still able to get a nice thick consistency. And so this is our corn squash pudding, 3 ingredients, corn, squash, and sunflower seeds. So if you try this, let us know. Be on the lookout for our next cooking video, either via YouTube or via Zoom. Thank you for joining us. Again, my name is Amanda. I hope you enjoyed our video.